Hey folks, so I wanted to talk to you all because among the Democratic Party and that new kind of democratic socialist current within the Democratic Party, there is this call for what they're referring to as a Green New Deal. Now, I think this could be a very, very good thing. I think it could be a very, very progressive demand, and if we actually were to have a Green New Deal, that would be a great step forward. I have some slight reservations, so I just wanted to talk a little bit just about the Green New Deal. Now, the second part, the New Deal, that's great. Now, this refers to the New Deal of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and this was a mass construction effort. Back in the 1930s, when the capitalist economy had collapsed, we had a president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who took swift, immediate action to help the economy and to help the people of the country. And he had the Works Progress Administration, hired millions of unemployed workers to start building things across the country. Key West Highway in Florida was built during this time. LaGuardia Airport here in New York City was built during this time. The majority of the post offices in the United States were built during the New Deal of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Roosevelt was basically using the government to fight against big corporations. He was taxing them at very, very high rates, using the money to rebuild the country and to build up the country and to build infrastructure. He also funded scientific research during this time. There was funding of the arts and of the sciences. It was a great moment in U.S. history. Roosevelt was aligning himself with the unemployment councils and the labor unions and the League Against War and Fascism and all kinds of progressive groups, and he was able to take swift government action to fight on behalf of working families in the United States. That's a very good thing. So the New Deal, absolutely. Now the green part, right? That's where I have some reservations, but I think overall it can be a good thing. Global warming is real, right? Global warming is not a fiction. There's definitely something going on with climate change. If you look at what's happening in the world today, if you look at the way the weather is behaving, if you look at, the rising temperatures, there's definitely an issue with climate change, and it is most likely related to fossil fuels. However, I will say that I feel like the majority of the voices in the environmental movement, or the voices that dominate the environmental movement, the voices that are funded by the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and the DuPonts and the Ford Foundation, kind of the well-funded environmental factions, those groups, I feel like they don't really feel like capitalism is the problem with what's facing the earth. The way they see it, the issue is people. These forces are very anti-human. The way they see it, the issue is overpopulation. There's just too many people in the world. There's too many useless eaters, especially in Africa and Asia, places like that. And that these developing countries, they should just stay poor, but instead they insist on raising their standard of living and using up more resources. And there is this contempt. There's this contempt for the developing world, and there's this belief that people shouldn't rise out of poverty, and that raising the standard of living is the problem. There's this worship of poverty, and there's this anti-humanism. And I would contrast that with the understanding of global warming that exists, coming out of China, right? In China is leading the world at this point in terms of green technology, right? They are making more green technology than any other place. They're actually weaning the country off of fossil fuels. There are new laws regarding new energy vehicles. Cars are amazing. They're basically requiring that 1 out of every 10 cars that be created not run on fossil fuels. China desperately needs to get out of the fossil fuel business because it's an oil importing country, and that is a vulnerability that they have. And China definitely knows that the problem is global warming, but they don't see the problem as human beings, and they don't see raising the standard of living as the problem. Instead, they say that the answer to the crisis of global warming and climate change is technology and science and sustainable development, and that overall the state and the government needs to step in and control the economy in order to get development that is sustainable. The problem in the ecological, environmental issue, the problem is that corporations don't have long-term views. They think in the short term. They do whatever is profitable to them. And as a result, there can be long-term ecological consequences of their actions. They don't think about that. They're just concerned about making profits. You need a centrally planned economy in order to have sustainable growth. But growth itself is not the problem. And there are forces within the green movement or the environmental movement who do believe that growth is the problem. They don't believe in human progress, and they have a contempt for the human race. They don't want to see the standard of living go up. That's where I disagree. So at this point, New Deal, yes, we need a government of action to swing into action, a New Deal, hire the unemployed, start funding scientific research, start building bridges and highways, rebuild the water systems of this country, rebuild the power plants of this country that are falling apart, revamp our educational system. I mean, you know, start building some high-speed trains instead of big highways. We ought to have high-speed railway, much more efficient way of doing things. You know, get the space program growing again. We need to have a forward-looking view, and we need a government that will push Americans to look into the future once again and start building instead of tearing things down, and not be hopeless, but be filled with optimism and be part of a collective group working to build a stronger country. That's what we need. We need a government of action, absolutely. And as far as the green stuff, yes, we do need to address the issue of climate change, but we need to do it in a way that is not anti-human. We need a Green New Deal that is guided by anti-imperialism and socialist ideology and Marxism. We don't need the kind of anti-human beliefs that dominate the environmental movement as it is. I am for the Green New Deal, and I think we should look to China for inspiration.